Hi, everyone. Hello, my name is Nisha Carre. I'm the co-founder of Human Biography and Women of Wonder. I'm a director, producer, and registered clinical counselor. And today I'm bringing you Wellness Chats with Nisha for the Stigma Free Society. And through this live event, the Stigma Free Society is a registered Canadian charity that aims to reduce stigma of all kinds with a focus on mental health. And they promote mental wellness education for youth while promoting resources for educators, school counselors, parents, and guardians. And the Society's goal is to create awareness of the various stigmas that exist in the world, develop an understanding of the challenges that face numerous people, and encourage people to foster an acceptance of themselves and others. And to learn more, please visit www.stigmafreesociety.com. And now I would like to welcome our wonderful guest. Hi, Carrie Cantwell.
Hello.
Welcome. Carrie is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to tell you guys all a little bit about Carrie, who is a writer and artist who lives with bipolar disorder. She enjoyed a successful 16-year career as a film and television graphic designer, earning an Emmy nomination, amazing, and almost 40 film and TV credits. That's a big accomplishment. And in 2021, she retired from the entertainment industry to focus on mental health advocacy and suicide prevention, super important areas. And her debut book, Daddy Issues, a memoir, was published in September 2021. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's chosen by Amazon as the #1 new release in mood disorder books. So big accomplishment. And Daddy Issues is about growing up with a bipolar dad who she lost to suicide, and how her own bipolar diagnosis helped her forgive him. So a very meaningful journey here. Carrie is a writer for Bipolar Magazine, WebMD, I go to it often, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the International Bipolar Foundation, the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, Medical News Today, Stigma Free Society, Suicide Awareness, Voices of Education, and several award-winning bipolar blogs. Her website it's an amazing website name, darknessandlight.org. It's very beautiful. So welcome, Carrie. Your journey thus far has just been deep and meaningful, and I appreciate that you're sharing it with us today here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here and to share my story and hopefully, inspire some hope among your viewers.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what we're looking for. And so, Carrie, you made quite the career change, right? You went from, film and television and graphic designing and getting an Emmy. These are huge achievements. So you're feeling like I'm in this field. I'm making things happen. And then you decided, okay, I'm out. I'm going to make a shift, and I'm going to get out of film and television, and I'm going to work in the field of mental health advocacy. Can you tell us a bit about how did this happen? How were you inspired to do this?
Yeah, so I actually wrote an article about this for
Okay.
BP Magazine's blog. That's Bipolar Magazine, and I can share that if people want to take a look at that
Yeah,
later.
super cool. Great idea.
Yeah, and so basically, I worked in the film industry for 16 years, as you said. And, ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved movies. And if you would have asked me, even at the age of 5,
Yeah.
what would your dream job be? That would be it. I
Ooh.
really worked very hard and, of course, kind of worked my way up very slowly and put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
But, got to a point in my career where I was like, I don't even want to be promoted from this position. Like, if I stayed in
Mm.
this position forever, I loved what I did. It was really rewarding. I got to design, logos and big signs and billboards, and then go watch a movie in a theater or on TV and see it right there, huge, and get movie credits and stuff. So it was really exciting. But the thing is, with an exciting job like that, with a lot of, jobs like that,
Yeah.
there comes a lot of stress. And
Right.
there were a lot of hours. It is typical for most people who work in that industry to work 12-hour days, often 6 days a week. Granted, that is usually only for, until the show wraps. So that's for months at a time, but
Yeah.
it can go on for 6 to 8 months. So it is a lot of stress. It's a very high stressed environment. A lot of things there are move very quickly. And
Yes.
eventually, when I was younger, when I was about 30, I had so much more energy, and
Yeah.
I also didn't have the kind of insight that I have now. I would just be like, you know what? My needs can be put to the side. I don't care if I'm stressed and I'm having anxiety issues and I'm having problems sleeping. I love what I do, and that's the most important thing. And I'm so proud of myself. And I
Mm.
would go for 8 months and then be done with the job. And then I'd notice when I was finished between jobs, I would get, sick, like get a cold, and I would be exhausted and I would feel depressed. And I started realizing that like the stress and the kind of up and down nature of that career was really triggering specifically my bipolar disorder. It was
Right.
almost like when I was on working on a show, that was like the manic or hypomanic go, go, go
Yeah.
thing, phase. And then when I was done, it was this very abrupt crash. All the people that I've just met and spent 12 hours a day with, I don't see them anymore at all. And then I'm alone and isolated, back to being at home all the time. And so that's like the depression. So it's almost like that career mirrors the
Yeah.
illness. And
Yeah.
because of that, it really was triggering my illness. And it had been for years. I just kind of ignored it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it wasn't until really this, I'm sure this happened to a lot of people recently, working remotely and actually then having some time off in 2020, like a lot of
Yeah.
people did.
Yes.
I started kind of reflecting on how does this affect me? And
Mm.
I realized that, yeah, my career was triggering my bipolar disorder.
Oh,
So it was a really hard decision
I
because
bet.
I still loved all the people I worked with and I
Yeah.
loved what I did,
Yeah.
but I had to
And you're
leave.
obviously really good at it.
I had to be in recovery. And I realized, it's going to be a hindrance to my recovery if I keep going like this for another 16 years.
Yes. And also probably like a hard decision, right? But you won an Emmy and you're like working on all these films and you really made a name for yourself. But beautiful that you were able to recognize what was happening and how that schedule and that pattern wasn't helping you. And so you're like, I'm going to make a change and I'm going to do something different. And so you did. Um, and like you said, these last couple of years have been a lot of awareness opportunities for people
Hmm.
because we got into quiet spaces. And so like, what's really happening? You also wrote a book called Daddy Issues, which was published in September 2021. Like amazing, cool title, like very catchy and like draws you in. Can you tell us about your book that you wrote, Daddy Issues?
Yeah. So it really started out as journal entries
Mm,
that I had been writing down for years for myself,
yeah,
just for my own personal healing, which I'm sure a lot of people watching have kept a journal.
yeah,
And I didn't mean, wasn't for anyone else to read. It was just, oh, here's how I feel today or whatever, or this is what I just went through. And after years of recording my own stories, I started realizing that I had a book on my hands.
wow,
And I also kind of started realizing in tandem that my story, when I would tell people, or write about it in BP magazine, it helped people just feel less alone, for me to share my experiences and help them kind of understand everything from their own bipolar disorder to maybe struggling with a family member who has it, which is I've done both.
yeah,
So it was in 2021. It was really after I decided to kind of make that career change that I felt like it was 3 months later that I published my book, even though I had been working on collecting the stories and, stringing them together and stuff for over 10 years.
yeah.
I had kind of been like working towards a book for about 10 years, but it wasn't until 2021 that I finally published it. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And how did writing this memoir impact your mental health?
Really, I mean, of course, because it started out as journal entries too, but it was really healing and freeing. Healing because I worked through so many things through my writing, like, confusing emotions or whatever. Writing was kind of like my way of talking to myself on paper. Um, and it also helped me kind of reflect and learn more about myself, especially as I went back and read things that I had written previously.
Mm.
And, things that I thought, oh God, that seemed like it was never going to end. It seemed like the end of the world. I was so, I was just in such a bad place. And then I look back later and I'm like, wow, like with some perspective, I'm like, that was depression talking. So it's really helped me gain a lot of insight, especially into my own past thoughts, and learn that, how temporary things are, and that things will change, and they have for the better. So
Wow. And maybe you could tell us a bit about, your experience with your father, with your
yeah.
dad, and kind of like he had his own journey he was on, and how when, how that impacted even you, because this is like having, a an experience upon experience, right? Intergenerational experiences within your family, and how that's impacted you.
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, my dad had his good moods and his bad moods, but he was definitely more than anything unpredictable. And so I never knew from one day to the next, is he going to be in a bad mood? Is he going to be brooding and like isolate himself? Or is he going to be irritable? Or is he going to be manic and be like, buying a bunch of stuff, or like talking too much, or, like a lot, and, or being like somebody that I wish he was, but I know that it's like not necessarily him. Like he'd get really outgoing all of a sudden for him. And I'd be like, the first couple times that happened, I was really excited. I thought, oh my God, this is the dad I always wanted. And then
Mhm.
after a while, I realized, no, he's going through an episode. He's just, having a manic episode.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, like, I also saw kind of what happens when bipolar disorder is either not treated at all,
Okay.
or is not treated correctly.
Right.
So, and I know that it's such a moving target, and it's so difficult to treat. It can be, so, and every treatment for every person is different. But, it's not like he wasn't trying eventually to, but, he didn't find the right medications. And this was also, he was diagnosed in, I believe, like the early 90s, and I think we've come so far since then. But, just to see, like, I don't want to, even though I loved my dad, and I still love my dad, I didn't want to end up like him. I wanted to take care of myself, and I didn't want to have these crazy, unpredictable moods that would affect everyone around me,
Mhm.
and just put everyone kind of on walking on eggshells feeling a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, he wasn't like abusive or anything, thank goodness. There are a lot of worse experiences I've heard about. But it was still this psychological uncertainty and fear of, I don't know what he's going to be like,
Yeah.
and being afraid of his bad moods, because he could be, to me as a little girl, and him as a 6'2" man, kind of intimidating, a little scary.
And so
So
how old were you when, like, was it always spoken about that this is what dad's living with, or this is what's happening? Or were you kind of
no, I mean, when I was young,
yeah.
I didn't really know, and I don't think my mom and my dad really knew for sure for a while. I was told, my mom told me, and my mom actually like sat me down in high school, senior year of high school, I believe, and told me he has manic depression, which back then that's kind of more what it was called.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't like our household didn't speak about things like that,
Yeah.
but it was, his bipolar was so, and with bipolar, it can look so much like your personality.
Yes.
And, my dad was never like, it wasn't like he was this life of the party all the time. And then all of a sudden one day he got depressed and it was this abrupt change. It was like he had struggled with bipolar obviously his whole life. And he generally was in the same mood for the most part, which was slightly depressed, slightly
Mhm.
isolated.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, like he was being that out of the ordinary, but he also was just undiagnosed and untreated for much of his life.
Yes. And so, and then one day something clicked in you that you thought, I think I need to like see what's happening within me.
Well, it's kind of the best way to describe it is I have it's all in my book, but essentially he committed suicide. He died by suicide when I was 24, and when it happened, I was like, I'm fine. It's okay. Like I just was in such shock, and I was in shock for like 4 years, literally 4 years, until the anniversary, and then all of a sudden I just broke apart and had what ended up being my first major depressive episode. And that was what then precipitated me going and asking for help with the help of my mom and going to a psychiatrist and then getting diagnosed. So it was actually ironically, and my diagnosis is what eventually helped me understand my dad. So the irony of all of it is it was the whole time my dad was alive, I didn't understand him. And it was his losing him and my reaction to that actually is what triggered my ability to finally come to terms with and make peace with and understand him, because I realized I had the same illness.
Wow. Wow. What a journey of learning and experiencing, and probably took a lot of work.
It did.
As life does.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of work and lots of healing and understanding and being gentle with yourself, and so much. And so how has your experience living with bipolar disorder, how has that shaped your life and career and like the decisions you make now?
So, living with bipolar and seeing what happens or what can happen when it's not treated correctly or you don't take care of yourself has made me realize that, of course, I need to take care of myself, and do things like get enough sleep and take my medication and go to therapy. But I also have to think about life adjustments, like, avoiding triggers. If a career, for instance, is a trigger for your mental illness, no matter how amazing it is or how rewarding or lucrative it is,
Yeah.
it's not worth it if it's going to jeopardize, for me, my mental health.
Yeah.
So really my experience with bipolar has helped me learn how to take care of myself in really every aspect of my life and to be mindful of triggers and avoiding them, or, trying my best to, handle them as in a healthy way.
And it's interesting like that you say that, because I wonder, how many people give attention to the things that trigger them, or like make that connection. Like, oh, maybe this repeated action or this career or whatever I'm doing, maybe this isn't helping me. Um, how did you work through that? Like, how do you find those triggers and really notice, like, just for maybe people watching, right? That like, what should they be looking for? What should they be doing to start noticing, hey, maybe I need to change this part of my life?
Yeah, I mean, and for me too, I also had a relationship, a marriage that was very triggering, that I am not in anymore. Um, and really a lot of the problem and struggle is when you're in it, you don't see it. And that's
Yeah.
partially human nature. And it's also partially kind of comes with bipolar disorder is the lack of insight, especially in the moment. But, if you educate yourself and you learn your own tells, I guess, kind of like if you play poker, you have a tell. If you learn your own tells, like, oh, I'm shopping a lot,
Oh
I
yeah.
must be, this must mean something. Or, oh, I'm yelling at people in traffic way more than normal, or, shooting my fist out the window or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own things that,
Yeah.
it kind of takes a little bit of practice and sometimes getting feedback from other people too.
Yeah.
No matter how painful it may be, if you ask for it, you should, say, can you just tell me in the most constructive way if you see
Yes.
things that might indicate, maybe I'm having an episode.
Right.
Yeah, I try to look for like tells of mine.
Yeah.
And now, again, it took some practice, but it's not impossible no matter how long, you've had a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Um, by learning also a lot about bipolar disorder, there are a lot of commonalities like irritability, shopping, spending money is a big one, lack of sleep. So learning about it, and also just learning and paying attention to yourself and being as mindful as you can in the moment.
Yes, and I think that like you even said, journaling and like writing out what's going on with you and paying attention, and this really would be helpful for anyone, but like starting to pay attention to little signs and maybe writing down, hey, these are my, when I start to notice something's happening, and then what? Then you start to say to yourself, okay, now I need to make some changes in like what I'm doing today, or be aware. So the awareness can help right then to change the behaviors.
Well, and also I try to pay attention to my thought processes. So if I'm like getting off work, a really stressful long day, and I get home and I'm like, God, I just want to get on Amazon and buy a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
which I've done.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people
Too well
have.
done.
I look at, like, I think to myself, and again, writing helps, looking back helps. It might take a few tries to really see a pattern, but I'll say, oh, I'm self-soothing. That's what I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
stressed. I have anxiety, and I'm trying to release that. And it's not the healthiest way to do it, but I mean, that is a self-soothing activity. Similar ones, more healthy, maybe would be taking a bath or going on a walk or something like that. But, you get home, I don't have the energy to go on a walk, and I don't have time to take a bath
Yeah.
when I was working. So I would just get on my phone on Amazon and start buying stuff.
Right. So paying attention, like that self-soothing behavior, is that helping? And it's great that you're sharing this, because I think that could like help other people think about, okay, what are the things that I do? What are the patterns? And is it helping? Is it really helping?
Well, and I ask myself too, okay, I'm self-soothing. What am I self-soothing for? Why? What am I trying to soothe away? The
Yeah.
stress from my job? Well,
Right.
maybe I should look at my job then. Instead
Yeah.
of treating, a symptom of the stress with a Band-Aid of shopping, maybe I should look at, transitioning out of that stressful lifestyle into
Yeah.
something that, maybe I won't be able to afford to buy as much
Yeah.
stuff on Amazon, but that's okay, because I don't get on Amazon and, try to self-soothe as much. So it's like a perfect,
Better.
perfect fit. I don't need to spend as much money anyway.
I was just talking to someone about like the meaning of life, and is meaning in high achieving and like going for the like top and making as much money as you can, or is there meaning in being happy and just being, and not having to have so much, but being mindful in every moment you're in?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and so you've written, Carrie, for like so many publications on the topic of bipolar disorder and sharing your story. And how do you think this has contributed to your healing journey of like sharing all these stories through so many different mediums?
Yeah, I mean, of course, getting my thoughts out there over time has helped, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from lots of people who've read my book that their story has helped them, or that they've bought it for, someone else and it's helped that person.
Yeah.
Um, so, that was kind of my goal. And it's really given me a lot of hope and confidence that, telling my story and sharing my story was something that I'm giving back to the community and helping other people who, if I had had the book that I wrote back then,
Yeah.
I write very candidly. It's, not a lot of flowery language.
Yeah.
It's, really just kind of my train of thought in my head. If I had had something close to that when I was younger, I think I wouldn't have felt so alone.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm getting feedback that other people are feeling less alone and more, like, and feeling less like weird,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I did that. I always felt like I was strange. And I'm like, no, that's, a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people do that.
We just
So,
don't share it. We just don't share what we're actually
right,
going through.
right. And the fact that, I'm getting that kind of feedback, people are like, oh, thank God you told your story with such honesty. I feel like I can now.
Wow.
I can tell my family now, or I can, reach out for help. And I have heard both of those things, and it's really great. It's like kind of, I wanted to help people, and I'm getting feedback that I actually am.
It's a win, right? Like right there, when you're getting that feedback and people are saying like, this has changed things, or allowed me to share, or I was nervous before and I didn't feel safe, and you created that safety. This is changing the world for the better.
I hope
And
so.
yes,
Maybe
no,
not the whole world, but
no, but like one person at a time and one family at a time. And, that affects the communities. And like, do you have any advice for people who might want to, get into mental health advocacy work because it's so needed and people might not know like how much it can like give back to them too.
yeah, I would say if you want to get into mental health advocacy work, do it.
Mm.
And don't hold back. And more important than anything else, be honest, be yourself.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. We've all been there in one way or another. And truly, it was only through my actual honesty that I was able to reach people. And when
Yes.
I was just like, you know what, I did this stupid thing and I felt like
Mhm.
horrible about it and I was miserable. And but then that's kind of, embarrassing to say. I mean, I wouldn't say that in maybe a job interview,
Yeah.
but when I am really honest about that, other people are like, I felt that way too. And so that's all it's all about. Mental health advocacy is all about helping people feel less, stigmatized and less alone.
Yeah.
And so, by being honest and being yourself and reaching out and sharing your story, you're literally doing nothing but helping others.
So important. And through us being honest with each other is how we can change things and help people feel accepted and connected. And do you have any advice, Carrie, for people who have had a similar experience to that of yours of having a loved one living with like mental health?
Yeah. I would say learn everything you can if you want to be there for them, which I'm sure you do. Learn everything you can about mental illness and try to be there for your loved one because, and I cannot stress this enough, isolation is what breeds depression.
Yeah.
And isolation breeds, going down that dark spiral that, if you're not alone, if someone knows they're not alone, then you're helping them regardless, just by them not feeling alone. And
Yeah.
also, one other thing that I wanted to say was don't try not to take it personally. If you're living with a loved one who has mental illness, remember that first of all, this isn't them. This isn't who they are necessarily, the
Yeah.
way they're, behaving or handling things. It's their illness talking. And also, it's not your fault. Just remember that.
Yeah. No, that's very important. Those are important things to keep in mind, right? And that you're not responsible to fix them, but just be there for them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what are some things, that you do to stay mentally well? And whether that have been when you're experiencing that with your father's episodes or even just for yourself.
Yeah. For me, I get enough sleep. Another
Mm.
thing I cannot stress enough, get a
Right.
good, consistent sleep. And I practice good sleep hygiene. I have a white noise machine and I wear an eye mask every night.
Oh yeah. I'm
I'm
IMAX.
very particular about getting enough sleep. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, I'm like, where's my eye mask? I can't take a chance of not having a good sleep.
Mhm. And, I take my medication. I listen to my doctor. That's another thing I will say is, I know what it's like to, I haven't done it personally, but to stop taking meds or not have the meds working or whatever,
Yeah.
that can lead down a really bad path.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky in that I've never been one of those people that's like, I don't feel like taking my meds. I'm going to stop. But,
Right.
for me, that's what's helped me stay in recovery is I don't have to just stop taking my meds altogether. If they're not working, I can talk to my doctor and adjust them.
Mm.
But I also, yeah, I write and I create art to release my emotions in a healthy, productive way. And most importantly, I stay vigilant about my bipolar disorder while not letting it actually define who I am.
Right. Can you tell me more about that? That's a very powerful statement.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I don't forget that I have bipolar disorder. It's not like I'm like I'm cured today or whatever.
Yeah.
But and I'm vigilant about it. So I take care of myself and I have it in the back of my mind. But I also don't let that be the only thing about me that
Mm.
um, is like the front and center part of my personality. It's like I'm also a writer, I'm also an artist, I'm also, a friend, I'm also a daughter.
Mm.
Um, So, it's like I don't ignore the bipolar disorder, but I don't have to I don't have to think about it 24/7 every day, because that can just get exhausting too.
Yes, it's a really good point. And it's beautifully said. And so, any final messages, Carrie, that you would like to leave with our audience today?
Yeah, above all else, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And if you are struggling, or someone who is, don't hesitate and don't be ashamed to reach out for help.
Yeah.
There is nothing to be ashamed of with mental illness, nothing. And mental health matters.
Yes, mental health matters and no shame. And the more that we can have conversations like this and that people can share their truths, the more we can feel comfortable with, yes, it's something that impacts all of us in different ways in our life. And I just really appreciate you sharing through your writing, through your articles, through your book, and by helping people to have these conversations by being so honest. So thank you, Carrie, joining us all the way from Georgia, Atlanta. Very cool. We're all like, I'm in Canada, so it's like amazing to see those connections that can even happen, that we all experience similar things throughout the world. It doesn't matter where we are. And just appreciate you and all the work that you're doing, Carrie. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nisha. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. And everyone watching, just, take care of yourself, do the things, pay attention to your signals and triggers and what are the things that you need to make changes in order to have a happy, healthy, content life. And so wishing all of you all the best and see you next time on Wellness Chats with Nisha.